Last week, I got accused of being too corporate. The funniest part of this comment is I think that I recorded the audio on a Tuesday morning before my 9 to 5. This week, we're going to take a more casual approach. The past few weeks, I've tried to toe the line between anticipating new audience members while still being engaging for subs that are up to speed. Doesn't seem like much of an issue, though. Mike Tomlin would say something about getting on a moving train.
That'll be the last time that I address it. And not only today, but moving forward. Never say never, but never.
So, moving forward, it'll be more get on it or get under it. While we have 6 exciting graphs to dive into from the Week 3 slate, it feels necessary to review some of the biggest moments from Friday and Saturday that didn't qualify. The New Mexico Lobos still exist in the desert of football ineptitude between El Paso and Albuquerque. Jason Eck brought in a ton of talent after leading the Idaho Vandals to 3 straight FCS playoff appearances, but you're more likely to hear about who left than who came in. Devin Dampier is becoming a household name at Utah, along with Jason Beck, who also abandoned the Lobos. Former coach Bronco Mendenhall has Utah State looking like they might make some waves in the Mountain West. And just last week, UNM was on the verge of losing to another FCS school. UCLA paid New Mexico over $1 million to visit the Rose Bowl. The Bruins and former On-3 number 1 overall recruit, Nico Iamaleava, needed a bleeder after getting boat raced by Dampier in Week 1, and then losing to Dan Mullen's UNLV squad last week. A game that ended with a 1-score difference, but wasn't particularly close after the Rebels jumped out to a 23-0 lead. But despite closing as 15.5-point favorites, they'd get stomped in front of hundreds of hometown fans in a game that in all actuality should have been an even bigger blowout, marking New Mexico's first win over a Power 4 team since 2008. USF Cinderella story struck midnight in Hard Rock Stadium. The state of South Carolina apparently has 0 good football teams, after starting the year with 2 in the top 15 and 2 preseason Heisman candidates. Following a disastrous home loss to Old Dominion, Brent Pry is out at Virginia Tech, with his last game as head coach mirroring his first. Maybe Shane Beamer is just eyeing up that Hokies job. College football's Jason Garrett is increasingly hard to rate. And Stanford football got an ACC victory after Frank Reich beat his former AFC South Division rival in Palo Alto. To kick off the worst chokes of Week 3, we take a trip to the site of the 2026 Bassmaster Classic in Knoxville, Tennessee. Don't let this underwhelming score fool you. The Vols choke here is way worse than it calculates out to. Fear not, football freaks, I'm working on an updated formula that'll roll out after the season that accounts for changes in win probability after every play. Tennessee's 21-7 first quarter lead should have set the stage for an upset, but the Vols spent the next 2 quarters doing practically nothing, with 5 drives going for a total of 57 yards, including 2 turnovers. Tennessee would take an 8-point lead midway through the 4th, but those Georgia players are fast. Really fast, because on 4th and 6, a moonball would give Georgia the chance to tie it up, which they would make look effortless. And this poor kid would miss the Vols' opportunity to win in regulation, qualifying him for the Moonshine Protection Program, with the inevitability of hillbilly losers flooding his DMs with death threats. Because even though he'd make his OT attempt, Georgia would end it with a touchdown. Last year, Kent State was far and away the worst team in college football. A 1-23 tenure from Kenny Burns sent him packing, almost comically considering Kent's proximity to Cleveland. Those familiar with the NFL will recall Hugh Jackson saying the team wouldn't go 1-15 again, only for them to follow it up by going 0-16. Burns did basically the same thing, going 1-11 in his first year before an 0-12 campaign that included a loss to St. Francis, PA, an FCS school that would go on to announce their decision that they would be leaving D1 to jump all the way to D3.
I am a product of pain and suffering!
In another fascinating parallel to the Browns, Burns wasn't fired immediately after the winless season. University officials waited until the end of March to place Burns on administrative leave following an undisclosed investigation, before firing him a few weeks later. Offensive coordinator Mark Carney would take over the interim head coaching role. The Flashes announced that they would be conducting a national search at the conclusion of the 2025 season. We're only 3 weeks in, and it's already the 3rd hottest job in college football. Stanford is still planning on a nationwide search, and Virginia Tech just opened a second Power 4 job. Fortunately, Kent State did beat Merrimack to start the season. In Week 3, they'd host Buffalo in their first MACtion of the year, following a visit to a ranked Texas Tech, and prior to 2 visits to two, as of today, top 15 teams in Florida State and Oklahoma. As 24.5-point underdogs, they'd find themselves up 28-24 late in the 4th, but Pete Lembo's squad would do just enough to walk away victorious. A few hours west on I-90 lands us in South Bend, Indiana. The Irish entered the game ranked the 8th best team in the country, despite their 0-1 record. They even moved up one spot last week during their bye. Legacy poll inertia is a real thing, because even after their botched snap and hold following Jeremiah Love's go-ahead score, the Aggies would score a go-ahead touchdown of their own, on 4th and goal from the 11. The Irish still find themselves ranked 24th according to AP voters. We can only hope that the playoff committee treats them more critically, as Notre Dame's remaining schedule is relatively soft outside of hosting Lincoln Riley's Trojans in October. They may be the last protection we have from arguments that a 2-loss Irish squad should make the playoffs come December. Joe Flacco's alma mater, competing at the FBS level for the first time, hosted UConn coming off the Huskies' disastrous choke in upstate New York. Jim Mora signed an extension at the end of the 2024 season, the school locking him down through 2028. A reward for UConn's first winning season in 14 years. Though you have to wonder if their AD is having buyer's remorse after their second straight overtime loss in as many weeks, giving the Fighting Blue Hens their first win against an FBS opponent. While the stakes may not be as high as they were back in the early 2000s, the revival of the backyard brawl has been nothing short of exciting. In 2022, the two bitter squads kicked off Week 1 with a barn burner that protected Morgantown couches after the Mountaineers squandered an 88.9% win probability late in the fourth. The game winner being a 55-yard pick six that sent a sellout crowd attending the first game in the newly named Acrisure Stadium into a frenzy. 2023 wasn't quite as exciting with both teams entering at 1-1, but WVU got their get back with a second-half shutout. Last year, WVU choked away the game by allowing Pitt to overcome yet another 2-score fourth-quarter deficit late in the game. An absolutely massive choke that I debated bringing up last season because the Mountaineers allowed a 2nd and 30 to go for a touchdown before going 3-and-out and allowing the Panthers to take the lead. Neil Brown would lose his job at the end of WVU's 2024 campaign, making room for one of the most exciting reunions in recent memory. Rich Rodriguez unceremoniously left Morgantown to accept the opening at Michigan. This departure was on the heels of the infamous 2007 backyard brawl in which Pitt defeated WVU 13-9 in Morgantown that saw Pat McAfee miss 2 field goals in a loss that eliminated the team from national championship contention. His exit was tumultuous, with the university filing a lawsuit against Rich Rod to recoup the $4 million buyout they had agreed upon when the coach got an extension prior to the 2007 season. By 2013, a public opinion poll found that only 11% of West Virginia voters held a favorable opinion of their former ball coach. That said, it's hard to blame them for holding a grudge. Rodriguez helped engineer 3 straight 11-win seasons before his departure, and the Nears have yet to return to the cusp of greatness. Things didn't go great for Rich Rod either, though. His Michigan tenure resulted in the lowest winning percentage of any coach in school history, along with a myriad of alleged NCAA rule violations. Perhaps the organization should open a branch in Ann Arbor, considering how busy the Wolverines keep them. After being fired from Michigan and spending 1 season as a CBS analyst, Rich Rod would be hired by Arizona. After 3 seasons in Tucson, he'd help lead the Wildcats to their first Pac-12 South Division title, before ultimately losing the conference title game to Oregon. His Arizona teams would eventually regress, and he'd be fired following the 2017 season. Not necessarily for his performance, but after an internal investigation into claims by a former administrative assistant that he had created a hostile work environment including accusations of sexual harassment. Rodriguez would deny the accusations of misconduct, but admit to the extramarital affair. He ultimately wouldn't land another head coaching gig until the end of 2021 when he was introduced as the new head coach for the Jacksonville State Gamecocks. This olive branch was an opportunity to usher JSU into their first season as an FBS program, an opportunity he'd capitalize on by propelling the Gamecocks to back-to-back 9-win seasons, the latter including a CUSA championship while his offense led FBS in rushing touchdowns. His success in Jacksonville ultimately paved the way for the reunion of the prodigal son to Morgantown. While expectations certainly weren't sky-high, one would have assumed that the Mountaineers would enter Rich Rod's first backyard brawl since 2007 with a 2-0 record. Unfortunately, during a visit to Athens, Ohio, they'd be taken down by the 2024 MAC champion Ohio Bobcats. Pitt, however, would enter the game undefeated, with wins against Duquesne and Central Michigan. Pat Narduzzi, in his 11th season as the Panthers head coach, is no stranger to big chokes. His team mounted an impressive comeback against Cincinnati last year, landing the Bearcats as the 8th worst choke of 2024, but on the other hand, he'd be one of the only teams with multiple chokes during the season. including a collapse during a 6-overtime thriller against Toledo, a team that went just 4-4 in the MAC. But much like the NFL team they share their stadium with, the loyalty runs deep, even if to a fault. But in this new season, the Panthers would enter as 7.5-point favorites visiting Morgantown for the last backyard brawl until the 2029 season. Why this game isn't scheduled annually is beyond me. In an homage to Pat McAfee, both teams would miss field goals during the opening quarter. Their offenses would continue to sputter in the second, with West Virginia carrying just a 7-3 lead into the break, seemingly on the way to another 17-6 type game. Also, Rich Rod channeled his inner Charles Huff, because coming out of the break he'd bench starter Nico Marchial for Scotty Fox Jr. Early in the third, WVU would score their second touchdown to extend their advantage. Pitt, being no stranger to 2-score deficits in this rivalry, would immediately answer with a touchdown and 2-point conversion of their own. The ensuing drive prompted years of PTSD to come rushing back as Fox Jr. threw an ugly pick, setting up an easy Pitt field goal to tie it. If that wasn't bad enough, he'd throw another pick on the very next drive, allowing Pitt to take the lead at the start of the fourth. Rich Rod would insert a third quarterback, Jalen Henderson, but after a turnover on downs and another Pitt touchdown, it was the Panthers that found themselves with a 10-point lead midway through the fourth. A deficit that is becoming immortalized in this game because Nico Marchial would re-enter the game as QB and lead 2 scoring drives to tie the game with just 11 seconds remaining. A precursor to what would happen in overtime, as WVU would score to open it, and the Panthers would only move backwards, sacrificing every couch in Monongalia County in an epic end to the backyard brawl for the next few years. Though it technically wouldn't be the worst choke of the week, because Nevada was apparently hell-bent on showing up here one way or another, choking a game they led almost the entire way by allowing Middle Tennessee State to score 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns against them. The same Blue Raiders team that got blown out by an FCS opponent, Austin Peay, just a few weeks ago. Man,